In today's episode, our guest is Andrea. Andrea founded FITMOM in April 2000, 1 year after her first son was born. The birth of FITMOM was the result of her own personal struggle to overcome severe postpartum depression in her first year as a mom. She found exercise to be the key to her survival and wanted to help support other new moms on their journey to health and wellness in their postpartum years. Over the years, Andrea has inspired and motivated thousands of women to work towards improved health with a special focus on mental, physical, and spiritual health for the new mom. As a mom of 3 boys, Andrea understands the challenges and needs of new moms and is consistently searching for solutions to help moms build their community support. Hello, this is your host, Renata Ortega. Welcome to today's episode of the Cycle Breaker and Changemaker podcast. This podcast is all about how to break free from negative generational cycles in order to create meaningful, lasting changes. For helpful tools and answers to your most pressing questions, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. I look forward to helping you on your cycle breaking and change-making journey. I promise you will find nothing more rewarding than this. Andrea, I would like you to introduce yourself and share what you do professionally.
Oh, hi, I'm Andrea. And so I actually work in the health and wellness field with prenatal and postnatal and actually menopausal women, specializing in helping them through those stages of life through fitness, mental health, and coaching.
Amazing. Thank you. And Andrea, today, would you be okay with sharing an example or some examples of cycles that you have broken? I've known you for, oh goodness, at least 11 years now. And you were instrumental in helping me with my own challenges with postpartum depression and with cycles that I have been trying to break throughout my motherhood, cycles that came up that I didn't even realize needed to be broken. So I'm wondering if you would be comfortable sharing cycles that you've broken in your own life.
Yeah, I would love to. I've spent some time thinking about that since you invited me to do this. I think maternal mental health and breaking cycles is something that has become particularly fascinating to me because I do have a grandmother who took her own life, and I have a mother who recently passed away in December who was quite mentally ill her entire life. And I myself have struggled with my mental health, particularly after my first son was born. I had severe postpartum depression. I was very much depressed before that. I would just say, to say that I don't love the term postpartum depression because I think it really dismisses what's happening to women when they are maybe already predisposed to depression and anxiety, or their circumstances are not sufficient to nurture a mother who is then also trying to nurture a child with sleep deprivation and all the other components. I think kind of the biggest area I feel like where I've been successful is being a public educator around the importance of supporting women in the most vulnerable stage of their life, understanding that, I have a saying that if you want to take care of a baby, you take care of the mother. And when you take care of the mother, you take care of the baby. You take care of the later child, and you are actually taking care of society. We were never meant to do this alone. We were never meant to do this in isolation. Even coupled mothers who spend 10 hours a day alone at home, it's not healthy. It's not healthy for one human being to be attending to the needs of potentially a colicky, crying, screaming infant with sleep deprivation. And if you couple that in with, the sleep deprivation that goes along with that, and then perhaps somebody already has a predisposition to poor mental health, it's clearly a recipe for disaster. But somehow we have normalized this state of women just struggling alone, and it's your baby, it's your problem. And unfortunately, I personally know, as I look at my now adult son who still struggles, and this is not to put all the blame on myself, as a lot of people in my life say, there's a lot of blame to go around. But, I have a 26-year-old son who has struggled immensely and has been institutionalized off and on from the time he's been 14. And when I look back to the first year of our life, to his life with me and his early years, and how unwell I was at that time, and how little support we had during that time, and how it absolutely impacted his brain development. We know that science says it, and I think that as a result, like, I mean, I don't just champion it. I'm not interested in talking the talk without walking the walk. Anyone who has a baby in my life, I become very involved because I truly believe that and I hate the term it takes a village. It seems like it's semantics, but it really is a job for all people. It is, a lot of people don't realize, like, the sounds of crying babies has been used as a form of torture in wartime. What does that tell us? That it is something that is going to set the brain off. And this whole concept that a woman who is barely surviving herself isn't going to go into survival. Her goal in the first year of her baby's life, and brain science says it, is to attach to her baby so her baby can attach to her and have a sense of security and a sense of healthy attachment. But if that woman is not well and she doesn't have the right kind of support and she can't balance all of the other things to survive in her life, to get her bills paid, to make sure they have a roof overhead, she's not going to be well. And that baby's not going to be able to form healthy attachment. And that baby's brain development is going to be affected. And what we're going to see later on with those infants who are impacted, and obviously there's a predisposition. So you're born with the brain you're born with. And we could talk about how that becomes. But in reality, some babies are going to be more vulnerable than others. And, you know, what we see in babies who have really poor attachment in the first year and the first years of life is reactive attachment disorder, right? RADS. So, and this RADS is always linked back to adverse childhood experiences.
Wow, thank you for sharing all of that. And how did your experience with your firstborn influence your decision to do what you do today as a career, and how you help so many new moms? And sometimes the new moms are your clients, but oftentimes they're not. So how did that influence your decision to do what you do today?
I mean, I always say that I was definitely at the fork in the road, a place I feel like I've circled back to many times as a part of sometimes not realizing that I myself get sucked back into the cycle, but trying to overcome my own circumstances. I remember my son was a year old. There was a time I was suicidal often within that first year. And there was a time where I stood on a balcony with him and thought, I'm pretty sure we'd be better off not here, and I don't know, like, I really didn't want to feel that way,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how to stop feeling that way. And I felt so trapped and I felt so alone. But I reverted back to the one survival tool that I had had my entire life that had saved me time and time again, that I had lost during my pregnancy because I had a poorly informed doctor who told me to stop exercising.
Oh my gosh.
And I was quite common at that time. And I thought, oh gosh, I need to start exercising again. Like, and I don't want to. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to eat. I don't want to feed myself. I don't want to get up with this baby. I just have nothing. I don't like, and I don't know what it was. I mean, I just got up one morning. I said, come on, just do 5 push-ups. And then, I somehow got myself to the gym. I went to the YMCA. I lived in downtown Toronto at the time. And but it didn't work out very well because he was so poorly attached. Anytime he screamed his head off anytime he was with anyone.
Oh.
He didn't have any security. Like, he was not happy ever. So then I started realizing that baby wearing worked for him. Somebody gave me a carrier. It was a terrible carrier. I'm sure my back is still paying for it to this day. And I would be wearing him all the time, and that was the thing that kept him calm. And even though I was still struggling in there, that was one solution I found that probably mitigated it being worse than it was. But I would, do squats and lunges. And, when he was a year old, that's when I decided to start my program.
Amazing. And I'm so grateful that I met you through that program. I had my kids strapped to me. I could bring my youngest, or I could have my youngest strapped to me and bring my oldest and still get exercise in. And I'm grateful because you were always a safe space for me. You were just a real person who I could really talk to about what was going on in my life. And when I went through postpartum depression really, really badly with my son, you checked on me every day. And I'll never forget that because you had so much going on in your own life, but you always checked on me. And when you're in those deepest, darkest hours, it's really important to have somebody that knows and cares and, can just say, hey, I can do this. I can check on you and I can keep you accountable to trying to get into working out, which is something you've done with me many times. And I'm extremely grateful for that. And I wanted to ask if you have a piece of advice for others that are facing some of the same challenges that you have faced and how you would guide them to break cycles and make changes.
I think one of the key things that I've done in my life is I've worked really hard to create a meaningful circle of people who don't, who show up, like people who are willing to practically show up. Like, sure, we all need someone to talk to and hear about, what's going on in our lives, but sometimes in the darkest hours, like you need people who are gonna, you know, literally actually feed you or, you know, help you get out of bed in the morning or take your kids, which again, like in my younger years and before I started my program, I had the idea of how that would look, but I didn't necessarily know how to do it. And I also had constructed a life that was impossible for me to have balance. I was working way too much. I was in way over my head. And I was trying to raise three kids in a terrible relationship, working 60 hours a week. It was insane. And I had become a public figure. And so the pressure on me to kind of maintain this level of professional performance in relationship to barely being a mom, which was felt like just a whole pile of hypocrisy. And I didn't really even know how I arrived there. It was kind of like a beast that the business grew and grew beyond my capabilities. Stepping back and getting back to my root, my kind of my core goals when I first started my program, which was that I wanted to be a more present mom and I wanted to do something that I loved doing. Having a big business that was way more than I wanted or needed, while there's lovely accolades and being super successful, for me, I had to really step back and look at my quality of life and balance and space and time and being able to be present for the things that mattered. With my younger two boys, I was definitely able to do more. And certainly, because of the things we went through when my family was younger and, a lot of other issues that related to, a poor relationship and stories that are not mine to tell, we've all had to do some work to overcome things. I'm happy to report my younger two boys are doing really well. Throughout their high school years, there certainly was a lot of struggle and recovery, especially in relationship to what had gone on with my oldest, and just recovering from the years of things that had happened. But I was there. I was there at appointments. I was there for basketball tournaments. I was there for programs. I was there to support dreams and to just go through the stuff together, and I think that is like that's the piece for me. I feel like a lot of times there's so much pressure to live these really fast-paced, ridiculous lives, and I do know that, we're also trying to survive, all of us. And I know that that is important, but I also think that connection and relationships and how we experience each other and these are the things that are going to all matter in the end. And I've gone through so much loss in the last 5 years, like immense amounts. It's mind blowing. I've lost some really close people in my life and was blindsided by that. And that's again, like just yet another wake up call. And certainly while the blow and the grief can be immense and you sometimes are deeply traumatized by sudden and unexpected loss, it is also a stark reminder that all we have is now. Like, you can't predict tomorrow, let alone next week. And, you know, I would like to hope that the experiences of me and the relationships that I have are going to be impacted positively by my time here.
That's amazing. You've certainly had a huge positive impact on me, and I know many other members of the community that you support. Thank you so much for being here today, Andrea. I'm so grateful for our friendship. I love you so much, and thank you for being
I
part
love you
of the
too.
podcast today. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode with Andrea. I hope you enjoyed and found our conversation as insightful as I did. I will be placing contact information for Andrea in the show notes. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cycle Breaker and Changemaker. I would love to hear from you and to receive your feedback. Remember, you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts in order to help me continue to help you. I am looking forward to having you join me for the next episode. Until then, please take care.